The struggle real. My 51M wife, 48F, basically had an affair with a coworker starting last fall. I became suspicious when she had left her phone in the car a couple months ago and called me in a panic from her iPad saying she wanted me to bring it home to her. I was already running late, and I would be back in a couple hours. I said I would bring it to her then. She was saying some cockamamie BS about emergencies and the kids, 2 at home, 16 and 20. One 22 years old away from home. I pointed out that she was literally talking to me on her iPad, and assured her everything would be fine. Thought nothing of it. Until I am on my way home and a text comes from the building guy, maintenance/janitor, etc. She manages the building, so they worked very closely together and it wasn't uncommon, so I thought, for them to have to communicate a lot. Sometimes if it was after hours oik this time, it could be important. So of course, that's where this nightmare began for me. I wish I had the foresight to forward the whole thread to myself then, but I was such a hopeless chump. I trusted her, and the messages were definitely not anything damning, the few that I saw, just very flirty, and it was clear that they were in constant contact about everything, not just work. The one text I read that first time mentioned something about her working in the yard, which was funny BCZ, she almost never does that. And him expecting to see no tan lines. So definitely no smoking gun stuff. But it absolutely got my attention. So of course my dumb ass starts asking her questions. Huge mistake. I had never been lied to or gaslight, and I still thought she was my person, and that I was still her person. So I let myself sort of believe her. But that feeling in the gut, that you sadly learn the hard lesson of trusting eventually, was telling me there was a lot more to the story. So suddenly I become Magnum PI. I was still so new at ever having to think about any of this stuff. I still had access to all her devices and there was no suspicion. So I started to read through the texts when I got the chance. I would scroll back further and further. Still no blatant fire, but definitely some smoke. Lunch together every day, sometimes apparently involving going for a drive. Lots of just really sweet things from her to him and some suggestive memes and comments back. Enough to make me think they could definitely be more than work friends. Enough to really start f***ing with my head, and of course I'm still too chumpy at this point, so I tried talking to her more. I guess I must have been hitting some nerves. BCZ, she started really opening up the floodgates at this point about not loving me anymore, not being attracted to me for a long time, resentment for a spell of drinking and letting myself go for a couple years after COVID. I had quit drinking at the end of last summer and had been getting into the best shape of my life, but this didn't matter to her. She basically said she had realized that she could fall for someone besides me, and didn't want to spend her whole life having only loved one man. That hurt like hell, of course. She was insisting that nothing had happened between them besides being friends and venting to each other about, among other things, their miserable marriages. I honestly had no idea she had got to that point. We have been together for 34 years. Met on the school bus. We have had an incredible life together. So many joys and highlights, amazing kids, nice place to live, I think. I have always been happy to let her manage the finances while I ran my insurance agency, which she used to help with for a couple years when we first opened. She has also always been able to buy whatever she wants. That got a little crazy, and I realized later that she used buying J. Crew clothes as a comfort mechanism. She probably has close to $50,000 stacked in all our closets and piled to the ceiling in our, well, soon-to-be, bedroom. Turns out she had also opened a bunch of credit cards I didn't know about, but that's another story. So I know something must be going on. I'm sure of it. But instead of just coming clean, she let me go through a month of thinking I was going crazy. She saw me at my absolute worst during that time. As I was uncovering more and more info, and feeling more and more conflicted, I had very few people I confided in besides her. So of course, on top of seeing Mr. Cycle through the stages of grief, she had to endure me begging and pleading for answers and sympathy and compassion, which she quickly ran short on. Eventually she said she was moving out and the marriage was over, after an extremely traumatic fight. I had threatened to call her affair partner, and for the first time in our 34 years together, she physically attacked me. She went apeshit FCKNG crazy. started swinging haymakers and trying to kick me with all her might. Luckily, I'm a pretty burly dude and she wasn't able to land much, but she did draw blood. So at that point I realized that she was willing to literally put me in the hospital to keep me from making trouble for Ron. That right there should have been the moment for me. Inside I knew that was the end for us. But I was still a chump. I still loved her and wanted desperately for her to realize that the thrill of sneaking around with this douchebag would not equate into some greener grass happily ever after, and tried to get her to not throw away our life together. Our last kid is a high school senior in the fall. Once she's done, we would finally have the chance to make all those dreams we had built together come true. Lying in bed planning about the grandkids and Sunday dinners we would have. Little babies running around us again and just finally achieving these things. And here we are. Right there on the goal line about to punch it in for the win. And on the last play of the game, instead of winning, everyone gets to lose instead. So it's been impossible to handle this with much grace on my part. I'm not proud of a lot of what has happened over the last few months, but I'm realizing there wasn't much else I could have possibly done. On top of this, after her declaration of the end, she said she was leaving. But nearly 2 months later and she's still here. Still keeping secrets, basically telling me tough shit, she's going to do this. Even though there's no way she can afford it, which scares me. She says she has a place lined up to move to in the next couple weeks. Not sure if it will happen. But it's been a daily heartbreak. I can't live like this much longer. It's amazing to me that she is okay staying here and making me go through this every day. I'm conflicted as hell. Part of me knows I need her gone, but part of me wants to take her upstairs and make love to her. It's so pathetic. So there's my story. There's more, but this is more than enough for now. TGX for reading.